can I say African spirituality? Is it too vague? Is it okay? Like,
so for me, I'm South African.
okay, so can I say South African?
Spiritual. Everybody's saying African spirituality, but I'm like, we don't know what they're doing in Togo, and we don't know what they're doing in Ghana. We know what's happening here.
Great.
So to circle it back here is, I think, safe.
So the difference between Christianity and what I understand from kind of the way that spirituality progressed in South Africa or in Southern Africa is that Christianity, one of its biggest traits is that it's written down. There's the Bible, there's a hard reference, it fucking doesn't change. Oh, it does change actually, and then a new church pops up. And that continues doing, but then they change the writing, or they take a chapter out of the Bible, or they put a chapter into the Bible. So there's a centralized knowledge point. Yeah. And that makes Christianity quite fixed. Like it can't really change. It makes it exclusive. Whereas what I understand from the way spirituality progressed here is that it was an oral tradition. So the knowledge was handed down from generation to generation. And one of the great things about that, in my thinking, is that makes it fluid and it makes it adaptable. And it acknowledges that as the world and as people grow, things change. Yeah. It also makes it inclusive. So I know some people can be Christian and iSangoma, for example, or just, you can go to church on Sunday, but you could also consult iSangoma. Yeah. But Christians, and especially in my community traditionally, you can't be anything else.
Yeah. I mean, my mom is like Christian.
Yeah.
I think, so for me, there is religion and then there's spirituality. Okay. And I think I was very opposed to Christianity. I lost interest in church a long time ago, long before I initiated. Just didn't resonate with me. My politics seemed, misaligned. It was not working. And when I initiated, I was like, I'm an African. I'm not into Christianity, colonizers, what. And then my ancestors started leading me back into very Christian-esque things. So the Bible and particular robes and scriptures and prayer as an insistence, And so I had to understand that there is a God, there is a source, and they are my ancestors. And then those things are working on different levels, maybe for the same purpose, but on different levels. And so they require different levels of engagement. Okay. And then also realizing that there is the source and the divinity of all things in me. And so it's important to connect with that, which is not necessarily the same as my ancestors. Okay. Because these are people in my bloodline, right? Whereas...
but we're all connected to a source.
And this is where some of the resistance around Christianity kind of to ease up a little bit, because now I needed to read the Bible for guidance. Now I needed to pray, to connect, and to do my work as a healer. Yeah. And so that was very interesting. And that's where the distinction happened for me of religion is very clear in terms of what role it is and what it does. And I think also religion, again, is very capitalistic in its nature. So when you speak about exclusivity, that's a very capitalistic trait of only for certain people, the chosen ones, Whereas Ubuntu, which I think is an innate guiding principle of African spirituality, at least in South Africa, says that there is space for everybody, There is no one actually that is more valuable than the other. The sum of the parts is equal. Everybody brings and makes this thing whole. And so that means everybody is welcome, and there is a space, and there is a role, and there is just, an importance and an esteem and a consideration for everybody. Whether you're old, you're young, you're gay, you're white, there is a space for you here.
Yeah.
And so, I think I would imagine that even in other cultures and spirituality in other places would be the same. Whereas religion is very much just for those special ones, and for the ones that follow the rules. And, but I mean, the way that I've like been open to scripture, I'm just like, y'all are just doing the same shit the Bible told y'all not to do.
Yeah, right.
It's like the same thing, and it's just crazy. It's just like,
you mean how the ideas in the Bible have been manipulated and warped to suit certain groups?
Yeah, and also just the way that certain people are treated from a Christian perspective, you know, intolerance. You know, he speaks about at the time it was the prostitutes and the lepers. And I was like, if they came here, you guys would be like, if Jesus himself came back, they wouldn't believe it's him. They wouldn't.
Yeah.
You know, because they're so like caught up. And that's what religion does, where you just like in the semantics, but not in the feeling and the sentiment of something.
Yeah.
You know, like you know the scripture, but you don't know what the scripture actually means.
Yeah.
You know?
You don't connect with it in the knowledge way that we've been talking about, the experiential way. You connect with it intellectually. And that's the other difference that I pick up between the, I'm going to say, warped version of Christianity, because I think at some point, and I think Jesus was an incredible
I think he's a pretty cool guy.
person, and as an archetype is a really great character for us to have as a role model and to reference and to think about. But I think what's become of Christianity is a warped version of what he was preaching. So Christianity, in my understanding and my experience when I was young, again, the warped version, is quite separate from life. You've got your job, you've got your family, and job is kind of first, right? The marketplace kind of comes first. And then Christianity is something that you keep for Sundays, or you keep for when you feel fear or anxiety and you feel like you need something from it. And I'm being very cynical, and I'm sorry to all the hardcore Christians.
We ain't lying, no.
But in my experience, spirituality in the African space isn't separate. It is a part of life. It is indistinguishable. It is a way of life. Is that correct? Is that a right reading?
And this is what I was saying in the beginning, that it's like I was introduced into the space through my calling, but as I engaged it, I realized that this is more about a way of life as opposed to doing a particular thing.
Yes.
It's about how you treat someone. So when we say sanbonani instead of sawubona in the plural instead of the singular, an acknowledgement of not just the person who's in front of me, but all of the people that are present with them but are unseen, right? Or...
That is a fascinating part of African language. I just have to pause there because Ntavi was teaching me some Sotho, Dumela and Dumelang, and she was like, even if you're like greeting a security guard who seems to be sitting by himself, you can say Dumelang. And I was like, how does that make any sense?
Because that's what, like, we understood that it's not just this person, and even the idea of understanding that people walk with their grandparents, their, ancestors, is not reserved for the space of healing. It's just the way that we understood us to be as a people, and so the language is also very important, because it, Masilo Mutada says, it reflects a hemisphere of thinking as opposed to like just one intention or like something, It says that we are thinking of everybody and we acknowledge everybody, not only I'm greeting you because I see you.